Well, welcome everyone and happy Tuesday. It's right here in the cold days of December, but we're going to warm things up for you because we have an awesome guest for the Deliberate Way. First and foremost, I want to welcome Jen Brisman, who is the founder of Vow Digital Health, and she's going to be joining me to talk about some of the things that we love to talk about as entrepreneurs and corporate entrepreneurs, which is about the big pivot and how we do things differently. So I wanted to start out by thanking Jen. Awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much, and appreciate it. We've known each other a long time, so it's fun to have Val on here. I know we did this a long time ago, and we chatted through many pivots. So excited to be here today.
Well, now I've known you for a while, but I don't know if everybody else here has known you for as long as I have. So I'm going to share a little bit of background about you, Jen, and you can fact check me as I go along. You are the founder and CEO of Vow Digital Health
A vow,
and
a vow.
a health safety platform created specifically for the event industry. But Vow didn't mysteriously appear. In fact, you've been working in the event space for more than a couple of decades. I mean, even though I think you're about 25, you may have been working a little bit longer on that. And you started with the weddingplanner.com. You produced some high profile weddings and corporate events. And during that time, as I recall, you found yourself looking for some new tech oriented solutions to systematize the way that your clients and collaborators do workflow together. And as I understand, you built your own technology out going back almost 15 plus years ago. Well, fast forward 2018, Val was born, and it's a collaboration tool. And I think you've described it like Slack or Trello, but built for the event industry. Do I have that right? Is that a fair characterization?
So we are a productivity tool that, yes, is transforming the future of work for all stakeholders across live events and experiences. So absolutely, as we transform the future of work, we, feel very comfortable being in a class of real unicorns that, similar to what Jira did for software, and of course what Airtable has done for data, and absolutely what Figma has done for design. So we've had a lot of pivots, and Vow is really, really excited to be at the forefront of bringing all stakeholders together across the live event experience journey, to collaborate, as you said, to work in real time with all of the sort of nuanced details that we all tackle across live events.
Now, when the pandemic hit, as I recall, you realized you had the right skill set and team and background to help the event industry bring live events back together. But that's not where you started. And now that the pandemic has sort of, gone into the recesses of people's conversations, you've had to pivot the business again. And for those who don't know Val, you work with organizations like the Navy SEALs, Peloton, the Pan Am Games, and many, many other really high-profile clients and events. But you're a whole lot more than that. But I got to start off by congratulating you. You've done some really awesome stuff. But I also, as an event insider, have to ask you a provocative question. You ready? Here's my question and kind of get things kicked off. Ticketmaster is definitely one of the big players in the event space. And I know that there is a lot of rumblings in social media. People are upset about concerts with, Taylor Swift and others feeling like just the system was archaic. It wasn't working for the average person. Is 2024 the year of disruption of Ticketmaster, or does it stay status quo? What do you think?
Well, Ticketmaster's a giant, as they should be, and they have a lot of crucial relationships with venues. We don't play in the same space. Certainly, take a lot of signals from them, but they really are a trusted partner of so many of the venues around the world. And if we remember telecharge, and we remember how we all got our tickets years ago from kiosks, it's come so far. So there's certainly a lot of titans like Ticketmaster, StubHub, et cetera, that are leading the charge, all with kind of different specialties, if you will, all making sure that event goers can fill those stadiums, and those stadiums see those button seats and the concessions and the merch, and all the point of sale that happens. And so all those ticketing platforms are at the forefront of that. You first have to buy a ticket before you can walk into that stadium.
So are you saying no disruption expected in 2024?
I don't. I mean, the ticketing platform that's like, disrupting payments. They'll always be, the rails. They'll always be like a hard and fast need for it. And so they're really, really trusted by so many venues. So I don't know that that's where disruption will be. I think, disruption will be on delivering a more fruitful and a more robust experience to event goers, to guests, to fans, to participants, to the people who rise to their feet with the roar of the crowd. And I think it'll always be about, the fans, the ticket purchasers. And I think that's where all these platforms that touch ticketing and everybody around it are going to really look to soar in the years ahead. So I think we rely on ticketing. We need ticketing platforms to be there so we can go to these shows. So it's, it's a good world when they're all.
So live events are kind of the kind of the heartstrings and the pulse of the event industry. But let me wind back the clock a little bit. Vow, the first iteration, you've been at this now for more than 5 years, if my math serves me correctly, give or take. What was the first version of Vow? And I'd love to hear, like, where did that inspiration come from? Does that business bear resemblance to the business you're in now? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I think being agile and pivoting is important, especially with market timing and conditions. There's, no glory in being the same exact product for 20 years. I think you have to pivot with the market and you have to respond to customer demands. You also have to be someone who can ingest technology, whatever's happening in the world that's making the world go round, that's really shifting not only hearts and minds, but how we work. And so you have to be willing to tear down features, in some case, tear down your own product or your own ideas, learn from your customers in the market, have an intuition about where to go and go there. And that's exactly what we did. So the first iteration of Vow, which was really born in 2019, late 2019, was a centralized communications channel where event organizers could come together and communicate, all stakeholders across all teams involved in all live events. And they could do so always in context and always real time. We sort of began to put the product in the market and the pandemic hit. And we really spent quite a few months really trying to figure out what to do and how long that time frame was going to be between the pandemic and what we were all dealing with in real time, and grappling with just live experiences in general to what's next and how do we gather safely.
Just to clarify, like, that first version, it sounds like it was kind of like supply and demand. There was a lot of suppliers out there. There's a lot of demand out there. How do you bring them together and create kind of a marketplace of these type of vendors? But during COVID, there was no live events or limited live events. Was that the death of the first version, or was there some other exogenous factors?
No, not at all.
No.
It wasn't the death of anything. It was a perfect wedge in the market to learn from. So the platform wasn't a marketplace. The platform was a communications channel for all stakeholders. And that was in, as I mentioned, late 2019. And so when we put it in the market, we were still road testing with all event professionals. They just were not in action at that point. And the question was what to do next. So we spun up a really critical feature. You referenced it at the beginning, but it is no more, called Digital Health, and it helped COVID screen large groups at scale. So an event organizer could go into the platform, create a true customized COVID screening experience. That was really the first learnings that I had of what it meant to not only scale tremendously, but have to scale, gather learnings at scale and pivot. So where the pandemic started when we first built the platform was totally different than where it ended. At the time we built it, there weren't even vaccines. And I remember saying to my product group, that's wonderful that we can gather really COVID screening technology at scale that we can gather results, tell people they're cleared, let them enter, very big grand scale events. But people didn't realize there were vaccines. And sort of an interesting little fact, when I was in college, I was pre-med and I worked on the first testing of Taxol and tamoxifen on mouse mammary gland cells. So had really a baseline understanding of things, and really saw that there were going to be vaccines, and we built the product to be able to COVID screen both the vaccines and the test, the important part of which was really the communication around that. So the communication between an event organizer and all the guests that they were wanting to bring together, that it was safe, that their information was secure, and really success around that COVID screening so they could go to that grand scale event. So it gave organizers a really intuitive platform. For us, what it gave us was really a connection point to the guest, and trust around the guest experience who was going through this really challenging journey. And how do we delight guests? And where is the magic? So the platform has since been deprecated. The learnings have really been unbelievable, because being able to scale with an industry coming back, with new ways of doing things and new ways of executing, both as organizers and guests, new ways of interacting. It gave us a strong wedge in the market to grab those learnings at scale and really go, okay, let's learn really fast and deploy really fast. So
now it's a pretty big leap to go from the event industry or kind of in the wedding space to public health. In many ways, your platform enabled people, and you didn't mention this, but I remember seeing Vow was the engine that allowed for kids to get to camp. Summer camps needed your platform to be able to make sure that people were vaccinated, they had their COVID tests. You're a big part of public health, enabling things to get back to the way they should be. That's a pretty big shift. How did you find yourself adapting into the world of public health and health tracking from wedding planning? Like, how did you make that leap?
Yeah, so we really weren't in public health, but what we really were
An enabler of it.
Yeah, so what we were really immersed in at the end of the day was our passion for live gatherings, and live gatherings are the fabric of our existence. And so any technology that I've ever built has been about how do we accelerate gatherings. And by accelerate, I mean, how do we elevate them for event organizers? How do we elevate them for guests? And how do we do it in a way that allows everybody to do more and take time back and really be delightful? And so that's really what any good idea is about. It's about leading into the market and your customers and learnings. And I think that's what Vow did really well. That's what I was really open to. And that's what the product is a reflection of today. It's a reflection of what customers and guests ask for. As far as sort of public health, again, I think it's the ability for Vow to ingest any need that may happen in the road ahead and react and respond to it for this same community. So whether it is a celebration like a wedding, whether it is a grand scale opening night, whether it's a corporate event, whether it's a sporting event, a VIP experience, it's sort of Vow's ability to be a learning machine and really understand what is next, ingest that, and deploy that. So each of these things were just one learning. And probably if you're a successful startup, where you start doesn't always mean where you end. So I think that's probably the sound bite, which is, we're a learning machine. And that's what we've been at every step.
I'd stalked some of your previous interviews, and one of the things I heard that I thought was really interesting, that you had mentioned your company was directly responsible for saving over $1 billion in event revenue in 15 months. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's really big. No contingency model. You get a percent of the revenue from those savings. Is that
no? It's a source of pride. If you look at all the events that we touched, and you looked at the estimated projected budgets for all those events throughout that period of time and how many butts we put in seats. We're pretty proud of that number. So that number is a reflection of really the total aggregate budget across all those events, the spend on all the things that we were able to protect for event professionals worldwide. So,
well, speaking of numbers, so I'll throw another number out to you, 450. So you had mentioned somewhere before that your company is spun up, and this is going back a little bit now, so I'm going to guess it's more, over 450 prototypes of the vow platform. That's a lot of prototypes. That's a lot of iterating. First of all, how do you do that? How do you keep up with these iterations and moving so fast and breaking things? It's hard to create that many prototypes. Creating a few is hard. How do you
I don't think I said that we had 450 prototypes, but probably in the lifespan of our company, we've probably had, I would say, about 30 to 40 prototypes. Prototypes are pretty easy to spin up. You're creating something that somebody can road test and really get a sense of the experience. Again, our platform's B2B2C, so they can really get a sense of what is the organizer's experience on the platform. And then, of course, an organizer wants to know what the guest experience of the platform is. So yeah, I mean, you first spin up a prototype because you want to show yourself, and you want to be delighted yourself, and then you probably use that tool, of course, to kind of spin that up for others. So it could be an investor, it could be a potential client. I know for us, before we spin out a feature, there's some features that are really small that we ship. They're very intuitive and they might be a couple screens. There's bigger features that we ship that have bigger implication on the platform. So we might do, 2 to 3 prototypes for them, but probably over the lifetime of the company, we've probably spun up, easily 40 to 45, if not 50 prototypes along the way.
Maybe not 450, but it's still a lot of prototyping. It takes a lot of effort. And just, for those people who are thinking like, well, it takes a lot of effort to build a single prototype. Why don't we just go right in and execute? Why prototype and expect to iterate? What have you found from your experience of having to do a lot of rapid prototyping?
I mean, prototyping has become very easy now, very accessible. It depends on how far you take. I mean, you're talking about prototyping versus proof of concept. Like a proof of concept might have a back end to it. It might be functional. It might be live. Prototype is more of a sort of a tool that you use to really like create the look, the feel, make important decisions about your community, make important decisions about your customers, where you can do it in a low lift way that has kind of less dollar value behind it. Engineering is sort of very expensive, and it's a very expensive place to make mistakes. But prototyping is sort of an easier way to make determinations. It's a great way also to interact with customers, and you can be a little bit more inspired and dream a little bit more. So, typically a prototype's going to include all the things that you want to build and all the excitement. And then you usually break that into small parts. So, we always find prototyping really, really useful. I think what you're probably asking about is proof of concept, where you're just making one small kind of version of that thing or one piece of that thing to really get people to test it. Because when something looks pretty, it also has to act pretty and work really strong.
Well, if you want to get asked out on a second date, you got to look good. Well, speaking of which, this metaphor of dating, we've said before that sometimes you need to make sure that you give a second date to your ideas. That the first idea is never the best idea, that you have to be able to go out and maybe kind of going into a different direction with it, to consider it and give it more possibility. How do you give more kind of headroom and space for those ideas to grow that maybe weren't the best at first? Are there ideas that started for you that maybe were, not perfect or not great, and they needed those extra dates or iterations? What have you found from the work at Vow?
Yeah, I mean, everybody iterates on their idea. You have to. Rarely does anything come out like fully baked, ready to go. The biggest companies in the world are iterating. They're sort of changing their viewpoints. They're evolving their viewpoints with how life changes around us. So that's just the day-to-day. That comes back to the team that you have, the voices that you listen to on that team. and staying close to customers, right? Like it's important to have scale, but it's also important to stay close to your customers and find that balance. So for us, it's just part of the culture of how we operate every day, how we socialize information. When we build something, we might reach out to like the 10 customers that we've worked with that we think are going to be most delighted by that actual feature or that new release or rollout. And we might reach out to them and say, hey, everything's on QA. Do you want to jump in? Do you want to test it? Do you want to let us know what we think? And they might say, hey, this alert wasn't intuitive, or where this button was, or I kept wanting to like click the screen and do something different. So for us, because we're dealing with kind of like all the subtle nuance of how this very vast ecosystem comes together through very consistent and repetitive workflows, we really jam with a lot of iteration, and we try to do it with each other, but we also try to do it with our customers. So, somewhere in between like proof of concept, like something we've deployed, and something we've ideated around, like a prototype in that middle. As we get close to releasing something, we might let some of our customers come into a QA environment and test some things out, and really bring to light maybe a couple of last minute things that we hadn't really thought about. And it also allows us to build really fast, as opposed to getting like really, really stuck in a paper process. We try to ship every 3 to 4 days.
I love something that you had said. I'll read a quote from you. People are always like, "Oh, did I say this?" Well, you're quoted as saying this, and it's a nice build on what you had said just before. This is what we're building. Are we crazy? That's what we will tell our customers and get them involved and help us adapt our business model. Is it fair game to put a kind of a crazy idea or something that maybe is really risky in front of customers early on? Or you wait till you've built it enough that you feel like, well, they're not going to think it's crazy or really outlandish. How risky do you go when you put something new in front of a customer?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, I can relate this back to the COVID screening platform that we had at the time that we ideated around it. There was nothing in the market. So there was nothing in the market that I could really point to with my engineers and my product team and say, this is the likeness of what we want to build. There was no B2B to C platform. And in some cases, we're kind of like B2B to B2C because we deal with groups and those groups deal with the guests. So there was no platform in the market that I could point to and say, let's build this. And there was also no knowledge. People in COVID were building the plane as we flew it. So we knew if we were going to come forward, we had to be smart and we had to be trusted. So that's probably where we built the most prototypes first, very strongly to show ourselves what we were building. Like we all didn't know, we all didn't understand, we all didn't have reference points. So we first really had to align everybody around a very strong vision, which whether you're Apple or you are a social media platform, you have to align everybody around a vision. Everybody has to like feel it in their bones really, really quickly. And very clearly why they're building it. And then I went to our customers. So all the customers that we pitched back in late 2019 and, explained to them, the vow is centralizing interactions across all stakeholders. Now we were spinning up this feature that was going to create the opportunity for everybody to gather again at scale. And our customers came in fast, and they were very helpful. Event organizers, we all kind of have the same things in our bones. We all work the same way. We all think the same way. We all react, to customers' needs the same way. We all anticipate the guest needs in the same way. And we all have the same value system around the guest experience. So for me, it was very, very easy to get in front of a number of organizers around a very clear vision that they could understand, to get crucial insight that I needed fast, to build fast and deploy fast, because we did want to bring events back at scale. So yeah, that was probably, when you talk about ideas, that's really where that ability to iterate on ideas and move fast came from. It was a very big risk, but it was a risk that was worth taking. There was no downside to being wrong because all events
were canceled.
they were canceled.
Yeah.
And there were so many platforms that were also doing a beautiful job of helping events, live experiences that would have otherwise been live be virtual. So there was so much talent and so much time and so much thought and ideation going into there. And I knew that there would be enough players. I knew that there would be a really big gap in the market as live experiences wanted to come back.
Awesome. I'm going to just remind our folks who are listening live, feel free to put into LinkedIn Live. You could put your questions in. I know there are a couple that have come directly already, so feel free to bring those in and invite those questions to come on in. I still have a couple more questions before we turn over to our audience for some of their direct questions, Jen. So one of the ones that I always like to ask is, if you were to give advice to you back in 2018, what are some of the deliberate practices, some of the things that you've learned along the way that it would have been so helpful if I had known this 4 or 5 years ago? What advice would you give to you, and things that you'd give to any other kind of startup entrepreneur that's on this journey?
Yeah. I mean, look, people have said it before. It's really, really hard. It's hard to build something from nothing. And it's hard to put time behind it and money behind it. You have to inspire, you have to hire, you have to know like what's most important versus a fire that you want to put out. But it just takes a phenomenal amount of discipline, and real fortitude, because there's so much that you I don't want to say sacrifice, but you trade off in life as well. So it's hard. It does require a tremendous amount of discipline, and a lot of trade-offs in life to really go ahead and move your goals along. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily for startups, but I think that is for getting anything off the ground in general.
Corporate entrepreneurs, anybody who's
Yeah,
project leading. I mean,
yeah.
people have to pivot regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or you are an entrepreneur running a project. You're going to have stalled projects. What would you say to people who are facing those obstacles, those blockades, and they know they have to pivot, but it's so hard to move away from your first love? Like we fall in love with our ideas, and obviously you were able to move away and pivot. What would you tell people who are struggling to make those pivots because they love their idea so much?
I mean, ultimately, you're building for someone, right? Like you're not building really for yourself unless you're building an internal tool for your own organization. You're
True.
building a
Yeah.
product for somebody. So you have to love that somebody. You have to love that ecosystem more than you've loved your own ideas, or your own designs, or your own product, or yourself. You have to love the people for whom you're building. And if they're your North Star, once you build one thing for them and you're in agreement or contract, or you've sold them for one thing, you can unlock the potential in different, business lines and business opportunities as you go. And that's the beauty of it, is that once they trust your company's value system, one of our core value system is trust. Trust that not only are we going to deliver the product that they want, but trust in our business practices, along data privacy and security, on platform, off platform. So once a company trusts you, they trust what you're about, they trust your vision, that relationship becomes deeper. And so it's more possible to grow as a company, because you can unlock more opportunities for them to grow in their use of your product and unlock more financial opportunities as a result.
Mm.
So I think, to answer your question, you have to remember who you're building for. And that is, way more important than the product you're building. So if you have to shift or pivot or tear ideas down, or refactor databases, you gotta do what you gotta do to always deliver the best product for that audience.
I love the message and also the principle of this, because it's so simple, but people skip it all the time when they're designing products and services. They build it and they fall in love with what they've built, but they forget at the end of the day, somebody else has got to use it. So if you don't really keep that person in mind, or if you don't directly interact with them, as you were talking about your interaction with the customers, it's kind of just sort of screaming in the wind. No one's going to hear it. No one's going to care. So I love that advice. And you've talked about interacting with your users. Do you have like your your favorites out there, like the people that you go back to time and time again to get advice? Who are those people that advise you and kind of coach you along to help you kind of stay on the on the virtuous path of product development?
My team's pretty good at that. So we do that on a daily basis. A lot of the, evolution of the idea might come from me having done the job for 20 years and building for an ecosystem that I not only love, but I understand intuitively all sides of the market. But my team's really, really good at that. I think if I'm sort of stuck on a bigger kind of roadmap question, my co-founders, and so we also have advisors and we have investors. So we have people that have like a different wheelhouse of experience that depending on what we're tackling or what I'm struggling with that I can tap into and lean on. But day to day, my team's a phenomenal sounding board at just making sure we're keeping in the right direction. And also fellow founders. It's interesting when you talk about products and products not always living up to their potential. Technology it's a beast, and it's not always easy to move a big ship. So a lot of times the failures we see in the products we love are not intended to frustrate us, but sometimes those building it like can't move faster. A startup, with 250,000 users is different than one with 250 million users, and how the speed at which you can actually evolve that platform and deploy is sometimes actually harder. So that's what makes this point in the journey fun. As you go along, sometimes you have a little more drag and you tend to move slower. So for us, speed is vital. We lean on our own team, we lean on our customers. And if it's, on the business side, we have advisors and investors that we tap, as well as fellow founders.
Awesome. I'm going to pause for a moment because we have a number of questions that have actually been thrown out. So you ready for some questions from the audience? Before we do a quick commercial timeout, we're going to drop right into the chat, the pivot plan, because if you want to be successful like Jen or any person who gets stuck or stalls on their project, you need a plan. And we put together a multi-step process I found to be successful. We've pressure tested this with customers to know what works. So we're going to drop in there, my gift to you, a pivot plan to any of the folks who are listening or watching on replay, because everybody needs a plan. So that's our little quick commercial timeout. To the questions now. So some questions for you, Jen. How do you know what ideas to take forward, and how do you know when to give up on an idea?
It's a great question. It depends on what stage, the idea is. If it's like the big thing, the big vision. Again, I come back to, is it, satisfying your community? Or is it a new point of view that needs more time to marinate with any community? Is it such a big idea that like it's going to take a critical mass to really determine what's going on? So I think data is vital, capturing data any way you possibly can and synthesizing and systematizing that data so that you can grab real learnings from it. So I think that's vital when you are testing ideas.
And another question that came in is, when you think about the advances in artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, does that impact the work that you're doing? Is it an opportunity or it is a threat? What do you say to that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any tool, whether it's crypto, whether it's AI, I think everything can be an asset. It can also be a weapon, no different than your voice, which we're seeing every day these days. Or your choices.
Yeah.
In this particular case, I think, for us, we do have certain viewpoints about how we are and we'll be leaning into AI for the best of our customers. For I think most products, you have to have a strong business stance. So like your tech has to support talent, and it has to essentially save people money, save people time, help them do their work better. and bring delight to whatever customer base they're working with. So like whether you're in CPG or beauty or whether you're in SaaS, it doesn't matter. And everybody will be utilizing AI to different extents. So for us, we have strong viewpoints on it, and how we're probably in Q2 next year, I'm going to roll out some proof of concepts to really test that at large, with other customers. But your product just needs to be strong from a business perspective. AI, like any other technology, should just make it that much better wherever it can. So that's kind of how
An
we think.
enabler, not the thing, but it's an
Yeah,
enabler
for
of
us,
what
it's
you
an
do
enabler,
well.
not the thing.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
I
And
think
for
for many
most
people it
companies,
is.
yeah. And for most companies, and I think, used really the right way for your customers, obviously it's wonderful.
And so another question, kind of acknowledging that I'm remiss in not asking you, what does your business do today? You've made all these pivots. If you were to give kind of like the elevator pitch to the layperson of what does Vow do now from where it all the way traveled from?
Yeah, Vow is the premier guest management technology for live experiences and events. And we're really the only one. We are a true B2B to VIP platform that is bringing together all stakeholders across all live experiences and events to work together in real time, always in context and always in one place. So we really eliminate an event organizer having to move group and guest data between anywhere from usually like 6 to 12 tools. So we do it all in one place, and we do it from a place of trust. And we do it from a place of trust on platform, but also trust off platform, with 24/7 guest support via SMS and email. And that is where, for us, AI will come in, so that guests always have an event assistant in their pocket, and they can always get the help that they need on demand, no matter where they're going in the world. So Vow started as a product for the very, very vast, massive event ecosystem. It is still a product for that. Vow's value system has always been about trust. And its value system is still, in fact, that. And everything that we do falls out from that.
And as a simple guy on this one, it sounds like it's not just for the individual. I buy a ticket to go to see U2 at MetLife Stadium here in New Jersey. That's you go through Ticketmaster, you get your ticket, you're all set. It sounds like this is more for the bigger groups. I am KPMG or Amazon, and I've got
Yeah, we're for private
hundreds, maybe.
live events. Yes, we are
Yeah,
for
tell me more for those big
Yeah,
groups of people.
event organizers, the biggest brands, the biggest groups in the world, they need to gather people at scale, whether one time a year or whether 4 times a month. They need to gather folks at scale, and they're managing guests and groups. So it could be an event organizer in-house at a corporate brand, at a social brand. It could be a Broadway opening night. It could be a gala or a fundraiser. It could be an upfront. It could be a summit, an association event, a government event, a lobbying event. They need to gather groups at scale, and they need to handle all of the functions for those guests and groups that they would normally shuffle between multiple tools to manage those guests and group. They can do it under one roof inside Vow. So an event organizer gets to come on in, and it creates a guest experience app in real time on mobile and native mobile as well as web. And it goes ahead and it's able to share that app experience with its groups and guests, and the connective tissue in between, so that organizers can do, literally 20 times more than they used to. With Vow than without. They can double time everything. They can save time. They can save money. They can save OpEx. And they can ultimately do more across not just themselves as their team. Event organizations are really interesting, especially across private live events. They're like these organizations that get stood up and they get tear down, even if they're a company, an IBM doing events quarterly, doing events monthly, doing events weekly. An event is a unique experience for one moment of time. So there's a lot of ebb and flow in and the labor and the resources they need. So on Vow, we really crystallize everything they need under one roof, both for themselves as a B2B tool and also as a B2B2C tool. So we give them a connective tissue to the groups and the guests, and ultimately help them gather learnings, and then go to the next even better and faster. So that's what we're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Very exciting. And I love that your core customer never changed, even with the business as the business pivoted. So really good affirmation on that. One more question. When you think about your kind of most prestigious or kind of most interesting events that you've hosted that you can share, what's one that stands out, or two that stands out of this was amazing? Like it, we made this totally transformative because of what we did, and they were a great event. What would you kind of hone in on as one that stands out for you?
I mean, they all stand out for different reasons. I think, last year and earlier in the year, we did a lot with Infor Broadway. Broadway was really hit hard by the pandemic.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So moving past, COVID into guest experience management and sort of watching them come back to life, was really exciting. So any small and in some cases big roles that we played in that, was just really super special. For us, it's Broadway is decades old, and it's a live experience. It's not something you watch on your TV. And yes, we've all watched productions of it,
Hamilton.
Hamilton, et cetera. But
Not the same. It's not the same.
it's not the same. The actors are extraordinary, and the way you feel when you walk out of the theater is really just magical. So for us, touching all live experiences, and some that aren't even events, but just really live experience in life is pretty magical. So every day that we get to do that is super exhilarating.
Awesome. Well, you did well with the questions. I've got one more round for you. You ready for a little bit of gamification? So the name of this game, Jen, is called I Do or I Don't. A little bit of play on the idea of a vow. Your company is Vow, so we have some vows for you to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a statement to you, and I'm going to ask you to tell us if you do or you do not agree with the statement. And I'd love you can elaborate a little bit on it. I've got, quite a few that are queued up for you. You ready?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. Well, let's get some vows going. My first vow is corporate event planners will host more hybrid events in 2024 than they did in 2023. Do you do or don't agree with that?
I don't. They're not seeing the ROI. I think having a virtual extension will always be vital. And virtual is going to evolve in the years ahead massively. But I think that the majority will be IRL.
All right. Next one. AI is going to revolutionize the corporate event planning industry one day.
I think it's revolutionizing everything now. I mean, anybody who says it's not is probably not in technology. No, I mean it's revolutionizing everything now, and we're just really as a humanity being able to all equally understand its power, and its prevalence is really strong. So it's doing it every single day now. So yeah.
All right. Here's one that's kind of near and dear to your heart. Live events are 100% fully back.
Yeah.
Do you agree or not agree?
Yeah, I do.
They are back.
All
right.
Yeah, I mean, the market
Do tell.
Yeah, I mean, they're back with a vengeance. I mean, most of the market statistics show the ecosystem growing at a CAGR of about 8.63% and growing to about 2.2 trillion in 2030. We see those numbers across our customers. They're coming back bigger and stronger. The budgets are tougher, and that's really where Val comes in, because it allows them to do more with less, especially across their teams. So yeah, I mean, for sure.
And I'll just a kind of an adjacency, has the COVID effect impacted the way people budget, plan, or think about events? Or did people just kind of snap right back into place from 2019? What do you think?
I would imagine all different things. I think that people place such a high value on the smell, the sweat, and the handshake, and the hug. They place
Maybe not all the sweat. I could
maybe
I
not
could
all of
pass
it,
on some of that.
but the opportunity and really, rising on the feet and the roar of the crowd. I mean, we see that across the numbers that all of the major ticketing platforms are reporting in terms of purchases. We see that, of course, across Taylor Swift. Live experiences have now really skyrocketed just in terms of their level of importance. They're edging as much older as they are younger, meaning to, the younger set. And it's, kind of like a rite of passage to go to multiple concerts. If you're 11, if you're 12 years old, whether you're going with your family or going, 3 moms and 3 girls. So I think it's become a rite of passage. So it's about more entrance in the space as well. So there's more people in the space buying tickets than ever before. And really, we have things like Afterpay and, stage payment plans so that, just like I think Expedia does it as well. So you can really afford those tickets and have layaway. We used to call it layaway when I was younger, and have layaway for those tickets. So you can have that experience. So I think it's not just that events are back. It's not just that we value them the way that we did before. I think they've really hearts and minds are just fixated on live experiences, and rightfully so should be.
So this next question could be somewhat duplicative, but I'm going to ask anyway. Are live events, are they more generationally skewed? Younger people are more likely to not go to live events than people in, let's say, our generation. Agree?
No, I mean, I think they're skewing younger every day. I think more,
Really?
yeah, especially at the mainstream stadiums. I think more kids, if you will, are going to live experiences all the time. They're hosting them, they're going to them. There's other, small platforms that, kind of gamify their gatherings as well. So no, I think, everything's a live gathering, whether you're in college and you're, using platforms to meet up with 30, 40 friends to go to a bar, or whether you're, a student traveling in another country. I think that events are skewing both older and younger. I think, older folks are coming out in droves, and we see that and we saw that. But I also think that, I don't know what the numbers are, quite frankly, but I would imagine the way we see it is that younger folks are coming out in droves and really impressing upon to their parents, like, I don't want a birthday party. I want to take 4 friends to this concert. And I think, like I said, it's become a rite of passage for the younger set that really wants to get out there and see their favorite artist or see their favorite show, or have a gathering at a local restaurant with 20 friends on a Saturday night. So we're seeing it all the time.
I got a few more vows for you, a little bit of a different direction.
Sure.
Big company pivots, like, for example, Twitter shifting away from being a podcasting platform way back when it was called Audio to become Twitter. Those types of pivots are extremely rare. Do you agree or not agree with that proposition?
I think most companies have pivoted, or I guess I would say iterated. A lot of them started with the same user base, but they evolved into being a better product. I admittedly don't know the entire history of Twitter and X
Fair enough.
but I think most great products have evolved. Many have gone into other market segments. Many have bought smaller platforms to ingest, other users and other tech and other viewpoints and other teams. So,
All right, next one. This one might be this one is a bit controversial, maybe a little bit controversial. Pivoting is acknowledging failure. Do you agree or not agree with that?
no, I mean, everything, 9 out of 10 fail, right? The thing you deploy is the thing that succeeds. So I don't know what failure is. It's kind of like the cutting room floor, like all the extra footage that you have on the cutting room floor is not failure. And it usually surfaces in different ways when you're looking for something special. It could be, something about PR, something about marketing. You have to have a cutting room floor to build something great. As you go, you want the cutting room floor to get smaller because it's expensive.
It shouldn't be filled with all the
Expensive
scraps
to
of the
have
field.
waste. But yeah, I mean, you just like, as you start, you have a lot of cutting room floor, and then, as you go, you learn to be a little bit more shrewd and rehearsed at how you edit. But you just think of it as edits, not really, as failures. It's whether it's you thinking about yourself, thinking about the product, like you're just you're editing yourself, you're editing your product, you're editing your thesis or your viewpoint. I think the important part is just to know what you're building and who you're building for. Like if you're not super clear on those things, everything else in the middle will fall apart. But that's why people look for product market fit or community market fit, is sometimes they roll something out and they think that they're building it, for one group of users or one customer or customer profile, only to find out, wow. And we found that too, that different customers related to the product in different ways. So I think of it as maybe editing and not failing.
Last question. So last vow for you. I believe that running a startup venture is the best thing that you can do in your personal and your professional life. Agree or not agree?
Yeah, absolutely agree. Everyone should do it at some point.
What? Tell me why. Why? You're trying to sell somebody who's like, I don't
I think it's
know.
just about being an entrepreneur. I think being a non-tech CEO is a little bit different. Now I'm very tech, but there were a lot of learnings along the way. It's easier to build technology now, believe it or not, than even just 3 years ago. There's a lot more tools, there's a lot more platforms, a lot more low code opportunities, people to build it for you, here, near shore, far shore. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can execute. But yeah, I think everybody should do it. It's an exciting place to be. You learn a lot, you give a lot, and the startup ecosystem is pretty extraordinary. It's really a very, very highly collaborative ecosystem. So I think part of the reason people can move fast is if they lean into all the other stakeholders in that startup ecosystem, all the different groups that are available for support, for resources and opportunities. So I think, that it's exhilarating. But it's best if you know what you're building and you have a path to scale and financial success. But I think everybody should try it.
Awesome. I've got one last question for you. I always like to say that innovation's about seeing what everyone else is seeing, but thinking what no one else has thought before. What is nobody thinking right now that you think is going to be kind of the secret sauce, the magical potion that will really drive success for startups and entrepreneurs like you and I in 2024? What's the trend or the thing that we need to see that no one else is seeing and thinking what no one else is thinking? What do you think?
Wow, if I had that, I would play the
I know it doesn't have to be right.
lottery.
With the power of the crystal ball, we won't be able to go. We could go back in time and adjudicate this, but what do you think is the kind of one of the big things that you would want to latch onto if you were to advise somebody, this is the next big thing other than plastics? What do you think is the next big thing in 2024? A little reference to The Graduate for us old timers.
Yeah, I don't know if I know what the next big thing that we're gonna see in 2024. Hopefully, peace and markets stabilize. That's what one would hope for.
Agree on that.
I do think that we're gonna see two things. I think a lot of companies closing next year. And I think we're going to see a lot of large technology companies buying a lot of small startups that had like what I would call like sharpshooter solutions, like solutions that would take those companies a long time to build, but were really specific and really needed by a particular ecosystem, but just weren't wide enough to gain speed. So, I mean, I could sort of lend that lens. I don't think that's going to change anyone's world. It's certainly not. So I don't know if I have like a really sexy, exciting answer. But I do think we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of startups, even pretty advanced ones.
Well,
Shut
with
their
all your pivots, I figured you might be a pretty good prognosticator, but I'll take that. I'll take what you're laying down. I'll pick that up. Jen, I want
We're
to
prepared for everything.
yeah, listen, you can't have an answer for
Got the
everything. You
Swiss
can't.
Army knife. We've got the backpack. Ready to go.
I want, first of all, big thank you for taking the time to share some of your insights, your experience, and the awesome stuff you've been doing at Vow. Big congratulations, and thank you for joining us on this last episode of the year for the Deliberate Way. So thank
Yeah,
you,
such
and
an
we wish you
honor.
a lot of great luck.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you. And we'll see you guys all in 2024 with our next slate of guests for the Deliberate Way. We have some great ones coming up. So tune in 2024. If we don't see you before then, happy holidays, peace, happiness, and health and prosperity to everyone. So take care, everyone. And thanks again, Jen.